AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. So this is going to be long, but I need to get this off my chest because I honestly don't know if I'm a jerk here. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, and we've always been close. We grew up in a relatively small town, and both of us were very family-oriented. Our parents divorced when we were young, but we stayed tight, and we've always been each other's support system. I've always been the responsible sister, the one who tries to keep the peace and ensure family holidays and events go smoothly, and Emma has always been more spontaneous and occasionally a little reckless. But I never thought that would come into conflict like this. About 2 years ago, Emma started dating someone new, Mark, 30M. When she first told me about him, I was cautious but tried to be welcoming. I met a few of her previous boyfriends, and most of them were short-term flings, but Emma seemed serious this time. Mark had a job in finance and came across as charming and confident, but the more time I spent around him, the more I noticed little red flags. At first, it was subtle things like interrupting people mid-conversation, making passive-aggressive comments, or joking about people's appearances. I shrugged it off because I wanted to be supportive, and Emma seemed happy. Over time, the behaviors escalated. He would criticize Emma about her weight, her clothing choices, her career, and even her hobbies, but always framed it as helpful advice or joking. At family gatherings, he would make condescending comments about my parents' house being small or our family dinners being boring. He would also subtly compete with me in ways that didn't make sense, like bragging about his investments or name-dropping people he supposedly knew. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe I was just sensitive. Things came to a head about 6 months ago. Emma got engaged, and I was invited to the proposal dinner. I arrived early to help her set things up. Mark immediately started commenting on everything I was doing, telling me I was doing it wrong or too slow. During dinner, he made several comments about how Emma could do better professionally, implying she was settling for a mediocre life. I was mortified. Emma laughed along awkwardly and tried to change the subject, but I felt humiliated on her behalf. After that, I tried talking to Emma privately. I told her that I was concerned about Mark's behavior and that some of it was outright disrespectful and manipulative. She got defensive and said I was overreacting and reading too much into jokes. She insisted he was under a lot of stress at work and that I needed to be more understanding. I tried to drop it because I didn't want to ruin her engagement, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The wedding planning started, and things just spiraled. Mark would show up uninvited at planning meetings, critique the caterer I had recommended, and constantly remind Emma that she owed him for financially supporting parts of the wedding. He also made comments about how our family was not classy enough for a proper ceremony. I began noticing Emma's usual bubbly, relaxed personality disappearing. She became tense, anxious, and apologetic for things that weren't her fault. I tried to help her, but she would say I was siding against her fiancé and accuse me of trying to sabotage her happiness. Last month, we had the bridal shower. Mark came, as did our extended family. He spent the entire afternoon subtly mocking me, saying I shouldn't dress like that or look so serious in front of my friends, commenting on my career choices, and making jokes about my relationship status. Several people noticed, and I could see Emma's embarrassment, but she didn't confront him. That night, I had a long talk with her. I told her that I loved her and wanted to support her, but that I could not stand by while she was treated this way. I told her that I would attend the wedding only if I could have a private, calm conversation with Mark beforehand about boundaries and respectful behavior. Emma told me that was impossible and accused me of trying to control her wedding. Last week, she called me and said the final guest list was being sent out. I told her clearly that I could not attend the wedding as long as Mark was present, because I did not feel safe being around him, and I could not support a relationship that treated my sister this way. Emma lost it. She told me that I was being selfish, that I was letting my jealousy ruin her day, and that I was effectively cutting her out of my life. She said everyone else in the family was attending, and that me not coming would make the entire day awkward. She begged me to reconsider, even offering to speak to Mark about it herself. I refused because the issue is not negotiable for me. His behavior isn't just annoying, It's controlling and abusive, and I do not want to validate it by attending. I spoke to my parents about it, and they are split. My dad supports my decision, saying that my boundaries are valid and that Emma needs to realize what she's agreeing to marry. My mom thinks I'm overreacting and that I should just be polite for one day to avoid a family scandal. My friends mostly support me, though some say I could at least show up and then leave if things get bad. I don't think I can do that, because the idea of being in the same room with him makes me extremely anxious. The problem is, Emma has stopped talking to me. She's only sending passive-aggressive texts like "enjoy your lonely life" or "hope you feel proud of yourself." I keep thinking about all the happy memories we've shared, and it kills me that I'm now being labeled as the villain in her story. I also worry that I'm escalating things by refusing to attend, but I don't want to compromise my mental health or validate Mark's behavior. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I believe her fiancé is abusive and disrespectful? Character count, 6,298 if you want. I can draft a second story in a similar style that hits closer to the 7,000 character max, with even more twists and family drama. Do you want me to do that? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her partner? I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 31F. We were close growing up, but things started to drift apart when we hit our 20s. Emma met her fiancé, Derek, 33M, about 4 years ago, and at first, I was happy for her. But over time, Derek's behavior made me increasingly uncomfortable. He's manipulative, controlling, and borderline emotionally abusive, at least in the way he treats Emma. I noticed early on that he tried to isolate her from friends and family, including me. It all came to a head about a year ago when I attended a family gathering at my parents' house. Derek insisted on being there and constantly made snide comments toward me in front of everyone. For example, he would mock my career choice, my appearance, or my hobbies, and it always felt intentional. When I call him out politely, he would act shocked and claim I was overreacting. Emma never defended me. She would just roll her eyes or tell me to let it go to avoid an argument. Over the next year, I stopped accepting family invitations when he was going to be there because the stress and anxiety he caused were unbearable. Recently, Emma announced her wedding date. I knew she wanted it to be a big event and was trying to include everyone, but the thought of sitting through hours of Derek being present, watching him belittle anyone who disagreed with him, was unbearable. I spoke to my parents about my feelings. I explained that I couldn't, in good conscience, attend the wedding while Derek was involved. My parents were disappointed and tried to convince me to reconsider, saying that it's Emma's special day and that I might regret missing it. They suggested I could simply be polite and stay out of his way. I considered it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that attending would be like condoning Derek's behavior toward my sister and me. I tried to talk to Emma directly, explaining that my absence wasn't about her, but about Derek and how uncomfortable he makes me feel. I told her I still love her and want to be in her life, but I couldn't stand being around Derek. She reacted badly. She said I was making her wedding about me, that I was being selfish, and that I was choosing a man over family. She also accused me of trying to manipulate the situation to punish her. The conversation ended with both of us crying, and she told me she didn't want me at the wedding. She said if I didn't show up, our relationship might never recover. I felt torn. On one hand, I want to be there for my sister on one of the biggest days of her life. On the other hand, I cannot force myself to be around someone who has repeatedly mistreated both me and her. After the conversation, I sent her a heartfelt message explaining that I hope she has a beautiful day, that I am genuinely happy she found someone she loves, but I can't attend because of Derek's presence. I also offered to celebrate with her privately before or after the wedding. She hasn't responded, and my parents are furious. They've called me selfish and suggested I might be estranged from the family if I don't change my mind. Some extended family members have also reached out, saying I should get over it for one day, and that I'm overreacting. I felt guilty, but I also feel like I am protecting my mental health and maintaining my boundaries. I've never had a history of exaggerating things or blowing small issues out of proportion, and I truly believe Derek is toxic. I've even watched him make other family members uncomfortable, so I don't think it's just a personal vendetta. Some friends have told me I'm justified, and that weddings can sometimes amplify family tensions that existed long before the big day. Others have said I should bite the bullet for my sister and try to be diplomatic. I keep going back and forth in my head. I'm starting to wonder if I am, in fact, overreacting and letting my feelings about Derek interfere with my relationship with Emma, but I also feel that attending would make me miserable and could create a scene. I don't want to burn bridges with my family or my sister, but I also don't want to compromise my well-being. I know my absence will hurt Emma and possibly make her resent me, but I genuinely believe this is the healthiest choice for me. I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable, selfish, or dramatic for deciding not to attend my sister's wedding because of her partner. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my husband's cousin live with us permanently after he moved in temporarily. I, 34F, have been married to Tom, 36M, for 8 years. We own a 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, and we have a relatively structured life. I work full-time as a project manager. Tom runs his own small business, and we have 2 kids, ages 5 and 7. We've always been open to helping family, but we also value our home as a place of stability and routine, especially for our children. Tom's cousin, Ben, 31M, recently lost his apartment because of financial mismanagement and a sudden job loss. He called Tom in a panic, claiming he had nowhere to go and that he would be homeless if we didn't take him in. Tom came to me, asking if Ben could stay with us temporarily, maybe a couple of weeks, while he sorted things out. I agreed to this under very clear conditions. Ben had to respect our house rules, contribute to groceries and utilities, and actively look for work and alternative housing. Tom assured me he would communicate these rules to Ben. Ben moved in, and initially, things seemed manageable. He stayed in the spare bedroom, helped with minor chores, and kept to himself most of the time. But it quickly became apparent that temporary for Ben meant an undefined stay. Within days, he started leaving laundry all over the house, eating food without asking, and assuming he could use household items, like my kitchen appliances and Tom's tools, without permission. I reminded him of the conditions, but he brushed it off, saying he needed to feel at home. The problems escalated when Ben started asking Tom for money, claiming he didn't have enough for groceries or transportation. I reminded both of them that our agreement was for Ben to contribute financially if possible, and that I could not cover his expenses indefinitely. Ben got defensive, claiming that families should help each other and that Tom had promised he could stay as long as he needed. I explained that as long as he needed didn't mean indefinitely, and that helping him temporarily was different from enabling him permanently. Things got worse when Ben began inviting friends over, sometimes late at night, and hosting small gatherings in our backyard. Our neighbors started complaining about noise, and I had to deal with awkward interactions while trying to maintain our home life. Ben's attitude also shifted. He started implying that Tom owed him, that I was cold and unsupportive, and that our home should be open to family regardless of rules. I try to have calm discussions with both Tom and Ben. I explained that I was willing to help temporarily, but that his permanent presence was not acceptable. I also offered alternatives, short-term rentals, staying with other family members, or exploring roommates nearby. Ben refused, saying all of those options were unacceptable and that moving out would be too stressful. Tom seemed torn. He agreed with me logically but felt guilty because Ben is family. The atmosphere in our house has become tense. Ben mostly stays in his room, but the passive-aggressive comments, guilt-tripping, and disregard for rules are constant. He once left a mess in the kitchen for 3 days, then claimed he was too busy to clean it up, even though he wasn't working. I have tried to maintain patience, reminding myself that helping family is important, but I also need boundaries to preserve my sanity and my kids' routine. I have also noticed that my work has suffered. I need quiet to concentrate, and Ben's presence has made it difficult to focus on tasks that require long stretches of uninterrupted time. I've tried working from cafes and libraries, but the stress of dealing with him at home has impacted my productivity and mood. Friends and family have given mixed advice. Some say I should let Ben stay to avoid hurting family feelings, while others say I'm justified in protecting my home and enforcing boundaries. I feel like I've been generous, letting him stay temporarily, offering alternatives, and communicating expectations clearly. But he continues to frame me as unreasonable. I've spoken to Tom multiple times about the situation. I told him I would support him in helping Ben, but it cannot be at the cost of my family's stability, my work, or my mental health. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for setting limits, even though my actions are consistent with our original agreement. So, AITA for refusing to let my husband's cousin live with us permanently after he moved in temporarily. AITA for refusing to financially bail out my friend after she made repeated poor decisions. I, 29F, have a friend, Rachel, 28F, who I've known since college. We were very close for years, and I've always tried to be supportive, whether it was listening to her vent about work or helping her celebrate milestones. I'm generally a generous person, but lately, I've been questioning how much support is too much. Rachel has always had a habit of living beyond her means. She changes apartments every year because she claims she needs more space, buys expensive clothes and gadgets she can't afford, and routinely relies on credit cards to cover her bills. I've tried to offer advice gently in the past, but she tends to dismiss it as me not understanding her lifestyle. About 6 months ago, Rachel lost her job. I helped her update her resume, gave her moral support, and even loaned her a small amount to cover immediate bills. That was fine. I felt good helping her because it was genuinely an emergency. However, since then, she's been making increasingly irresponsible financial choices while expecting me to cover for her. 2 months ago, she borrowed $1,500 to pay for rent because she had spent her savings on a vacation she couldn't afford. I reminded her that this was her responsibility, and I would help her come up with a repayment plan, but she insisted I just cover it and said she would pay me back whenever she could. I felt uneasy, but I trusted her and loaned the money. She has made no effort to pay me back. Last month, she called me crying, saying her car broke down and she needed $2,000 for repairs. I told her I couldn't give her that much, especially on such short notice, and suggested cheaper alternatives like using public transportation temporarily or taking out a small loan herself. She got extremely upset, accusing me of not being a real friend and letting her struggle when I have the means to help. Recently, she dropped another bomb. She wants me to co-sign a lease for her new apartment because she claims she can't find a place otherwise. She said I could move in for a weekend once a month to make the landlord feel better if needed. I told her absolutely not. I explained that co-signing a lease is legally binding and would put my financial stability at risk, and that moving in occasionally does not make it any safer for me. She became furious, saying I don't care about our friendship and never help when it really matters. This has put me in a very difficult position. I feel guilty because she is clearly struggling, but at the same time, she has repeatedly made decisions that have led her to this situation, and she refuses to take responsibility. I have a stable job, but I also have student loans, rent, and savings goals, and I cannot afford to cover her mistakes indefinitely. I've tried to set boundaries, suggest financial counseling, and offer moral support, but she dismisses all of it. Mutual friends have weighed in. Some say I should just help her because she's your friend and friends help each other, while others say I'm justified in setting boundaries and that continuing to enable her behavior will only make things worse for both of us. Even Mark, my partner, has expressed concern that Rachel's reliance on me is straining our relationship. The latest incident happened yesterday. Rachel sent me a long message detailing all the expenses she needs covered immediately and said that if I refused, she might have to move back in with her parents, which she framed as totally humiliating. I responded calmly that I could not provide the money and that she needed to take steps to manage her finances responsibly. She responded with a string of texts calling me selfish, uncaring, and a terrible friend. I feel conflicted. I do not want to ruin our friendship, and I want to be there for her emotionally, but I also feel like she has crossed a line by expecting me to continually bail her out financially. I have suggested compromises like budgeting help, temporary side work, or looking into local assistance programs, but she refuses to consider any of these options. Reddit. AITA for refusing to financially bail out my friend after she repeatedly makes poor choices, even though she says I'm being selfish and abandoning her in a time of need. AITA for refusing to give my sister's fiancé a large sum of money for his startup, even though everyone says I'm being selfish. So this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to give all the details so people can understand why the situation blew up. I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 32F, and she's engaged to a guy named Ryan, 33M. I love my sister. We've always been close, but lately, it feels like I'm walking on eggshells around her and everyone in her new circle. Here's the backstory. Emily and Ryan have been together for 4 years, and they're really serious, talking about buying a house, maybe kids soon, etc. Ryan has always been a little ambitious, let's say. He's the kind of guy who reads a ton about entrepreneurship and is constantly pitching ideas for revolutionary apps or life-changing services. Emily says she loves that he's passionate, but her friends and family have told me he's often overconfident and not very realistic. I try to stay neutral because it's not really my business. A few months ago, Ryan came to me with an investment opportunity. According to him, he had a new app idea that could disrupt social media as we know it, and he needed seed money to get it off the ground. He casually mentioned that he needed $25,000. Now, $25,000 is a significant chunk of money for me, and I am not in a position where I can just hand it over. I work a decent job, but I have student loans, rent, and a plan to buy a house in the next few years. I told him I appreciated him thinking of me, but that I couldn't invest that kind of money in something so uncertain. That's when things got weird. He started saying things like, "Come on, you trust me, right? And Emily thinks you're being ridiculous." At first, I thought he was joking, but Emily backed him up. She said I was being selfish, that family helps family, and that if I really cared about her and their future, I would support Ryan. I tried explaining that I do care, but I also have my own financial responsibilities. I offered to help in smaller ways, like giving advice or connecting him with people who could legitimately invest, but Emily insisted it wasn't the same. Then the pressure escalated. Ryan started dropping hints about how my lack of support showed a lack of faith in their relationship. Emily told me she felt hurt and embarrassed because she had told him how supportive her family usually is. I tried to explain that my refusal wasn't a judgment on them as a couple. It was about my personal finances. I even asked if we could discuss a smaller amount or a structured loan that he could pay back over time. Emily and Ryan laughed and said it would be too complicated and that if I couldn't just trust them, maybe I wasn't really family material. That really stung. It didn't stop there. At our last family dinner, Emily brought it up in front of everyone, saying I refused to be supportive of her and her fiancé's dreams and asking why I was being so difficult. My parents tried to mediate, suggesting maybe I could find a compromise. I told them honestly that $25,000 was not something I could afford to risk and that even if I could, I would need to see a concrete plan. Emily got upset and left the table. Ryan didn't say much, but there was a very obvious look of disappointment on his face. Since then, it's like the family dynamic has shifted. Emily has been texting me constantly about how I'm selfish and how I'm letting her down. She's even made passive-aggressive comments on social media about family members who don't support each other's dreams. Our parents are kind of caught in the middle. They agree I'm not obligated to give anyone money, but they also want family harmony, so they keep subtly suggesting I should just do it for Emily. Ryan has been avoiding direct confrontation with me, but continues to make offhand comments when we're in the same room, like, "Some people just don't understand taking risks," or, "I guess some families are only about themselves." I've been second-guessing myself, not because I want to give him the money, but because everyone around me seems genuinely angry with me. Emily's friends are also making comments that I'm holding her back or not being supportive of her marriage. I understand that family often helps each other financially, but I also feel like this is different. It's a huge sum of money for someone's unproven business idea, and I would be setting myself up for serious financial strain. I've never invested in anything risky without research, and I certainly don't want to risk my future just to avoid a family argument. Here's what makes me feel even worse. My parents have told me privately that they don't think I'm in the wrong, but they also said I should consider the relationship, and that Emily and Ryan might never forgive me if I don't help. That added guilt is eating at me because I really do love my sister, but I also have to draw a line somewhere. AITA here. Am I really being selfish for refusing to give Ryan $25,000 for a business that has no guaranteed return just because my family is pressuring me to? Or is it reasonable for me to prioritize my financial security over keeping the peace with Emily and her fiancé? I don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to make a decision I could regret for years. I know Reddit loves to say family first, but this situation doesn't feel like a typical lend a few hundred scenario. It's a massive amount of money, and the way Emily and Ryan are framing it feels more like emotional blackmail than a request. I've tried to negotiate, compromise, and explain my perspective calmly, but every attempt has been met with guilt-tripping or passive aggressiveness. I'm at a loss for what to do, and I really need some honest outside opinions. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give Ryan a large sum of money for his startup, even though my sister and family think I'm being selfish. AITA for telling my sister-in-law that she can't bring her dog to my wedding after she accused me of being controlling. So, this is going to be long, but I feel like the situation is a bit complicated and I need to lay out all the details. 28F, am getting married in about 3 months. My fiancé, 30M, let's call him Ben, and I have been together for 5 years. Overall, our wedding planning has been smooth, but a big issue came up this week with my sister-in-law, Rachel, 27F, that has escalated to a full-blown family drama. When Ben and I first got engaged, we agreed on a guest list that would mostly include close family and friends. We also made a conscious decision to have a small, formal indoor wedding because we're both not fans of big, chaotic parties and wanted something elegant. We didn't want pets at the venue mainly because it's a fancy hall with a lot of breakable decor, and honestly, I just don't want the stress of managing a dog at a wedding. Rachel has a dog, a golden retriever named Max. She absolutely adores him and treats him like her child. Over the years, Max has been to some family gatherings, and he's usually well-behaved. That being said, he's big, excitable, and loves attention, sometimes too much. When we sent out our wedding invitations and the no pets allowed note, Rachel jokingly said, "What about Max? You can't leave him behind." I laughed it off and said, "Sorry, this one's humans only," thinking it would be fine. The problem started last weekend when I was finalizing seating arrangements and flower arrangements. Rachel called me out of nowhere, sounding genuinely upset. She told me that excluding Max was cruel and selfish, and that I clearly didn't understand how important he is to her. I tried explaining that the decision wasn't personal and that it was about the venue, safety, and everyone's comfort, but she kept saying I was being controlling and unfair. She even suggested that if I didn't let Max attend, she might skip the wedding altogether. I was shocked. Rachel has a history of dramatic reactions, but I thought our relationship was good. I texted Ben to ask what he thought, and he said, "It's your day, your rules. Don't let a dog ruin it." I agreed with him, but the conversation with Rachel kept escalating. She started sending messages like, "If you loved me, you'd let Max come," and even, "I can't believe you're choosing your so-called elegance over family happiness." I tried reasoning one last time. I said, "Rachel, I understand you love Max, but our wedding venue cannot accommodate pets. It's not about you or Max personally. I hope you can respect our choice." Her response was a screenshot of a meme that said, "Friends don't let friends have weddings without their pets," with a caption, "Guess that's you then." I honestly couldn't take it anymore. I called her and said, "Rachel, I love you, but this isn't up for negotiation. Max is not coming. Period. If that's a deal breaker for you, I can't control your feelings, but you need to make your decision." She immediately started crying and accused me of being selfish and controlling again. She also told other family members who started taking sides. My parents called me, saying that maybe I should reconsider for the sake of family harmony. Ben's parents told me to stand my ground, which I appreciated, but still left me feeling guilty. Since then, Rachel has been cold and distant toward me, and she told Ben she's seriously considering not coming. Other family members are frustrated and asking if I can just make an exception this one time. I've considered hiring a professional handler for the dog, but even then, the venue has a strict no pets policy, and I really don't want to risk someone slipping, Max getting scared, or him ruining our carefully planned seating and decoration setup. I don't feel like I'm being unreasonable. I'm literally asking her to follow the same rules as every other guest. But the way she's reacting makes me doubt myself. I love my sister-in-law, and I don't want to start my married life with this kind of drama, but I also feel like my wedding day should be about me and Ben, not our pets or anyone else's demands. Ben fully supports my stance, and some of my friends say I'm absolutely right to stick to my boundaries, but the guilt is gnawing at me. I even thought about offering to have a small wedding day visit with Max somewhere nearby, so she could bring him by for photos afterward, but I worry that won't be enough. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my sister-in-law she cannot bring her dog to my wedding, even though she's accusing me of being controlling and selfish. AITA for refusing to let my adult brother's friend live with me after he claimed it would be temporary. I, 33F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I work from home as a graphic designer, which requires a lot of focus in a quiet environment. I enjoy my routines, my personal space, and the fact that I have control over my home. I've always tried to be generous when family is in need, but I also have clear boundaries. My brother, Alex, 35M, has a longtime friend, Ryan, 32M, who recently ran into financial trouble. He lost his apartment because of unpaid rent, and his job situation is unstable. Alex called me one evening, asking if Ryan could stay at my place temporarily while he sorted out his finances and found a new place. Alex assured me it would be just a couple of weeks and promised Ryan would respect my rules and contribute to household expenses. I reluctantly agreed because I trust my brother and I understood that Ryan was in a tough spot. When Ryan moved in, the first week was mostly fine. He stayed in the spare bedroom, was polite, and helped with minor chores. But by the second week, he started treating my apartment as if it were his own. Dishes were left in the sink for days. Personal items appeared in shared spaces, and he began assuming he could eat anything in the fridge without asking. I reminded him of our agreement and the boundaries I had set, and he apologized, saying he didn't mean to overstep. By the third week, it became obvious that temporary was not his intention. He hadn't looked for work seriously and spent most of the day watching TV, playing video games, or sleeping. He asked Alex for money multiple times, claiming I wasn't providing enough support, even though I'd made it clear I was not financially responsible for him. When I brought this up with Alex, he said, Ryan just needs some time to figure things out. He stressed, cut him some slack. I told Alex I had no issue helping temporarily, but indefinite support while someone refuses to take action was not something I could agree to. Things escalated when Ryan began inviting friends over without asking. One evening, 5 of his friends came to hang out in my living room, drinking and playing loud music late at night. I asked him to ask for permission next time and to keep the noise down. He said, "Relax, it's my home too now, isn't it?" I reminded him that it wasn't his home and that he was a guest living under an agreed-upon temporary arrangement. He rolled his eyes and went back to his friends, leaving me to clean up the mess afterward. At this point, my stress was through the roof. I couldn't work properly, my living space felt invaded, and my patience was wearing thin. I spoke to Alex again, emphasizing that Ryan needed to either find a job and contribute meaningfully or move out. Alex seemed torn, sympathizing with Ryan, but also recognizing my frustration. Ryan overheard this conversation and became upset, saying I was heartless and only care about myself. He even suggested that I was being manipulative by forcing Alex to choose between him and me. I tried to compromise, offering to help Ryan find a temporary room rental or a short-term Airbnb, and even offered to lend him money for a deposit if he signed a lease elsewhere. Both Alex and Ryan rejected these ideas, claiming that no one else would help him and that I was being unreasonable. I reminded them that I had already allowed him to stay for weeks beyond the initial agreed period, and that continuing this arrangement indefinitely was not acceptable. The tension in the apartment became unbearable. Ryan would leave lights on, play loud music while I was on work calls, and eat my food without permission. Every minor issue became a confrontation, with him portraying me as selfish and unsympathetic. Alex, trying to keep peace, often avoided addressing problems, which left me feeling isolated in my own home. My friends and coworkers noticed my irritability and exhaustion, and I began to dread being at home. Finally, I made a firm decision. I told Ryan he needed to move out within 2 weeks. I offered help in finding alternative accommodations, but I was clear that staying past that time was non-negotiable. Alex was upset with me, claiming I was too harsh and ruining family ties. Ryan became more passive-aggressive, leaving notes around the apartment accusing me of being mean and uncaring. I stayed firm, knowing that my mental health, work, and personal space were more important than placating someone who refused to respect boundaries. I feel justified because I clearly communicated rules, allowed a temporary stay, and offered help for alternative arrangements. But I also understand that my brother and Ryan see me as cold for setting limits. I am torn because I want to support family and friends, but I cannot compromise my own stability and peace of mind indefinitely. So, AITA for refusing to let my adult brother's friend live with me after he claimed it would be temporary. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she revealed a secret about my late mother. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Clara, 30F. Our mother passed away about 3 years ago, and our relationship has been complicated ever since. Growing up, Clara and I had typical sibling rivalries, but I always try to protect her and support her. After our mother's death, I felt it was important to preserve her memory and keep the family united. Recently, Clara dropped a bombshell that has completely shaken me. She told me that before our mother died, she had secretly taken out a large personal loan in our mother's name without telling anyone. According to Clara, our mother co-signed some of the paperwork, but she never knew the full extent of it. The loan was used for a business venture that ultimately failed, leaving our mother in significant debt. Clara said she had only discovered the full amount after our mother passed, and that she felt guilty but didn't know how to handle it. I was shocked and angry. I feel like our mother trusted us to honor her memory, and Clara's actions have now put me in a position where I'm responsible for dealing with this mess. I asked Clara why she never told me about it earlier, and she said she didn't want to upset me while I was grieving and thought she could manage it herself. I reminded her that secrecy like this is dangerous and hurtful, and she told me I was overreacting. Since then, Clara has been pressuring me to forgive her and move on, claiming that it's not her fault and that she didn't know what else to do. I've been trying to process the situation, but it's hard because I feel betrayed. Our mother never had a chance to deal with the consequences, and now I feel responsible for cleaning up a financial and emotional mess I never agreed to handle. Clara keeps saying that I'm being unfair and that I need to let go of the anger because it's not helping anyone. The conflict came to a head last week. I had been organizing our mother's financial records and noticed that the debt Clara created had led to multiple late fees and interest charges. I called Clara to confront her calmly and suggested she take immediate responsibility for resolving the debt. She became defensive, saying I was attacking her and that she had done the best she could under the circumstances. I told her that the best she could was not enough and that hiding it only made things worse. Clara got upset and accused me of holding grudges and being controlling. Since then, she's been posting vague messages on social media about family betrayal and people who judge too quickly, which I know are directed at me. Some mutual friends have reached out, saying I should forgive her and that I'm letting anger control my judgment. Others have told me I'm justified in being upset because what she did was a serious breach of trust. I feel conflicted because I do love my sister and want a relationship with her, but I also feel like this isn't something I can simply forgive and forget. Clara's secrecy has caused financial strain, emotional pain, and a loss of trust that I don't know if I can repair. I've offered to work with her to resolve the debt, but only under the condition that she take full responsibility and acknowledge the harm she's caused. She refuses and insists that we move past it without her admitting wrongdoing. Mark, my partner, thinks I'm justified in my anger and that forgiving doesn't mean excusing the behavior, but Clara's friends keep pressuring me to reconcile. I've been trying to set boundaries, but Clara interprets them as punishment. The more I resist, the more she frames it as me being unforgiving and selfish. I want to protect my mother's memory and ensure that any decisions regarding her finances are transparent and responsible. At the same time, I don't want to lose my sister completely, but I feel like trust has been shattered in a way that may be irreparable. I've even considered family counseling, but Clara refuses, saying it's unnecessary and that I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Reddit, AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she revealed that she secretly put our mother in significant debt before she passed, even though she says I'm being unfair and need to move on. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend move into our family home temporarily. So this is going to be a long one, and I've tried to be as detailed as possible because I really need an outside perspective. I, 28F, live with my parents in the house I grew up in. My younger brother, Matt, 24M, has been dating a girl, Emma, 23F, for about a year. My parents have always been incredibly accommodating when it comes to family, which is why this situation has become so tense. A few weeks ago, Matt called my mom in a panic because he and Emma had a huge fight and she left the apartment they were renting. Apparently, she stormed out late at night, and he didn't know where she was. My mom, being the type to help family in any situation, suggested that Emma come stay at our house for a couple of days until things calmed down. Matt agreed and said he'd bring her over the next morning. When my mom told me about it, I was immediately uneasy. I like Emma personally, but I have never felt comfortable having anyone stay here unless it's a guest we explicitly planned for. Our home is small. My bedroom is in a corner of the house without much privacy, and honestly, I work from home most days, so the idea of sharing our space with someone I barely know well enough to live with was stressful. I tried to explain this to my mom, saying maybe Emma could stay at a hotel or with a friend. My mom brushed it off, saying it would only be a couple of days and that it would be the right thing to do for family. The next morning, Matt and Emma arrived. My mom immediately started fussing over her, showed her around, and making her tea. I tried to stay out of the way, but things escalated quickly. Emma made herself very comfortable, which I understand because it was supposed to be temporary. But then she started rearranging some things in the kitchen and borrowing my parents' clothes without asking. I politely mentioned that she could ask before taking things, but she rolled her eyes and said she was just trying to make the space homey. I didn't push it further that first day, thinking, okay, 2 days, I can handle this. By the third day, I started noticing that Emma was subtly trying to take over the house. She began giving unsolicited advice on how my parents should decorate the living room and made multiple comments about how messy my bedroom was. I keep it clean enough for my standards, but she clearly had different ideas. My mom seemed to agree with some of her opinions, which made me feel undermined and frustrated. I finally sat Emma down and said that I appreciated her trying to help, but this was my family's home, and I would appreciate it if she respected our space and routines. Emma got visibly upset and said I was being ridiculous and making a mountain out of a molehill. Things got worse over the next few days. Emma started using my personal things without permission, my headphones, my skincare products, and even my laptop once when I stepped out briefly. When I asked her not to use my stuff, she laughed and said, "It's all part of being like family, right?" I told her that no, it's not, and she should respect personal boundaries. She started ignoring me completely after that and only engaged with my parents and Matt. By the end of the week, I had reached my breaking point. I went to my parents and told them that Emma could no longer stay in the house. I explained that it wasn't personal, but the situation had made it impossible for me to work, rest, or feel comfortable at home. I offered solutions. She could stay at a nearby Airbnb with a friend, or Matt could go visit her elsewhere. My mom got defensive, saying I was overreacting and that I should be more understanding. Matt also chimed in, saying that I was being selfish and that Emma needed us because she had no one else. I stuck to my guns and said no. Emma left that day, but the fallout was intense. My parents have been upset with me, saying I could have been more accommodating and that family sticks together. Matt has been giving me the silent treatment and making passive-aggressive comments about how family shouldn't turn away someone in need. Emma posted something vague on social media about people being cold and unwelcoming. And while she didn't tag me, it's obvious who she's referring to. I genuinely feel like I did the right thing. Our home is our sanctuary, and I have a right to feel safe and respected there. My parents think I was too harsh, and Matt thinks I was cruel. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my family, but I also don't want to let someone take over my home and ignore boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay at our house, even though my family wanted to help her out. AITA. So, this is going to be a bit long, but I really need some perspective because my family is completely split on this, and even my closest friends are divided. I, 32F, have a younger brother, Ethan, 28M, who has always been the kind of person to stir drama, whether intentional or not. For some background, Ethan and I have always had a complicated relationship. We were close when we were kids, but as we got older, his sense of entitlement and stubbornness has caused a lot of tension with the rest of the family. About a year ago, Ethan got engaged to Lila, 27F. Initially, I was happy for them, but things started going sideways almost immediately. Lila is, well, she's very high maintenance and seems to have a lot of controlling tendencies. She's also incredibly particular about how things should be done in every aspect of life. For example, she completely reorganized Ethan's apartment when they moved in together without telling him. He didn't care at first, but I started noticing patterns that were frustrating. Fast forward to 6 months ago, I was asked to be a bridesmaid. I accepted, mostly because I wanted to support my brother despite my reservations. The problems started with the dress. The bride chose a very expensive, extremely uncomfortable dress that had to be custom ordered, and we were all required to pay for it ourselves. Fine, I can swallow that, but then she dictated shoes, hair, makeup, and even accessories. She was sending hours-long texts about how each detail had to match her vision. I complied because, honestly, I didn't want to create drama. A few weeks before the wedding, I started noticing that the group of bridesmaids was being treated differently. Lila would plan pre-wedding events and either leave certain people out or dictate who could attend. I tried to stay neutral, but I began to feel uncomfortable when she made offhand comments about my body and how I should lose weight for photos. I brushed it off, thinking she was just stressed, but it kept escalating. Then came the bachelor and bachelorette parties. Ethan's bachelor party was fine. He's not much of a party guy, so it was a low-key dinner with close friends. But Lila's bachelorette party was a disaster. She planned a weekend trip and invited only her friends plus the bridesmaids. She insisted that everything go exactly according to her schedule. Morning yoga, brunch, spa treatments, and a themed dinner every night. Anyone who suggested doing anything differently was met with passive-aggressive remarks or outright exclusion. I quietly voiced that I couldn't participate in every single activity because of work and family obligations, but she was incredibly rude about it, making me feel guilty for having responsibilities outside of the wedding. The real breaking point happened at her bridal shower. She had rented out a fancy restaurant and sent a long list of gifts she expected. I had already bought a generous gift, but apparently it wasn't enough in her eyes. During the gift opening, she made some pointed comments about how some gifts were not thoughtful and too generic. I tried to stay polite, but at one point, she opened a gift from me, a custom painting I had commissioned of her and Ethan, and said, "Oh, this is cute, I guess, but I was hoping for something more elegant." Everyone awkwardly laughed, and I felt humiliated. I didn't say anything at the time, but I quietly started removing myself from planning and participating in anything extra. I still went to the wedding, of course, but I kept my distance. On the day of the wedding, I made the mistake of voicing my concerns to Ethan in private. I told him that I felt Lila had been disrespectful and that I didn't want to be part of any unnecessary drama. Ethan, instead of understanding, got defensive. He accused me of trying to ruin his wedding and claimed I was being jealous because Lila is his future wife. I was stunned because this is a man who normally sees both sides of a situation. After the wedding, things continued to be awkward. Ethan started taking Lila's side in every family argument. At a recent family reunion, she openly criticized me in front of our parents for not being supportive enough during the wedding planning. I felt blindsided and embarrassed. I calmly tried to explain that I did everything I could to support her without compromising my own boundaries. But she doubled down and accused me of being selfish and dramatic. The family was divided, with some agreeing that I had handled things poorly and others saying she was overbearing and rude. The last straw happened this past weekend. Ethan and Lila invited me over for dinner. I thought maybe we could mend things a bit. During the meal, Lila started giving unsolicited advice about my personal life, including my career choices and the way I decorated my apartment. I laughed it off at first, but then she started comparing me to other bridesmaids in a very condescending way. I finally lost my patience and told her that I was uncomfortable with her constant criticism and that it felt like she was trying to control my life. Ethan immediately jumped in and told me that I had crossed a line by speaking to his fiancé that way and that I needed to apologize. I refused to apologize because I genuinely feel I was standing up for myself. The night ended with Ethan storming off and Lila giving me the silent treatment. Our parents have since called me asking if I'm overreacting and suggesting that I should just apologize to smooth things over. Meanwhile, my friends say I did the right thing by setting boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to apologize to my brother's fiancée after she repeatedly disrespected me and tried to control my life during her wedding planning? Or am I the one being unreasonable and causing family tension? I genuinely feel stuck because I want to maintain a relationship with my brother, but I also don't want to feel humiliated and disrespected by Lila at every family event. I've tried to set boundaries politely, but nothing seems to work. I'm considering distancing myself completely until Ethan realizes that being constantly siding with his fiancée over his own family isn't healthy, but I also worry that could permanently damage my relationship with him. I just want to know if I really am the asshole here. The story above is 800-plus characters and follows the popular AITA style with escalating tension, family drama, and ethical ambiguity. If you want, I can draft another version with an even bigger twist at the end to make it more viral-ready for Reddit's storytelling style. That one could hit all the engagement triggers like betrayal, secret revelations, and moral ambiguity. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend move in with us, even though he insists it's just temporary. I, 32M, live in a 3-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city with my younger brother, Ethan, 28M. We've always been close, and when he lost his job last year, I encouraged him to move in with me temporarily so he could save money while searching for work. Things were fine at first, and I thought it would only be for a few months. About 4 months ago, Ethan started dating Lena, 27F. At first, I didn't mind. He seemed happy, and I assumed they would spend most of their time together outside the apartment. However, it quickly became apparent that Lena expects to be in our home constantly. She started staying overnight multiple times a week, which I tried to tolerate, assuming it was temporary. The situation escalated 2 months ago when Ethan casually mentioned that Lena might move in just until she find her own place. I told him that I was not comfortable with that because my apartment was already shared between 2 people and adding a third would affect my space, privacy, and finances. Ethan brushed it off, saying it would only be for a short time and that I was overreacting. Soon after, Lena started leaving her belongings in common areas, taking over one of the spare rooms with clothes, shoes, and personal items, and essentially treating the apartment as her own. I confronted Ethan, explaining that this wasn't okay and that I never agreed to a permanent arrangement. He insisted that it was temporary and that I was being unreasonable. The tension increased last month when Lena started dictating household routines, like what we eat, when chores are done, and even how we use the living room. I reminded them both that I live there, pay the rent, and have the right to set reasonable rules for my home. Ethan argued that I should be more accommodating because Lena is part of his life now. I felt frustrated and disrespected. Things came to a head last week. I had a friend visiting for the weekend, and Lena became upset that our schedule was inconveniencing her. She made several passive-aggressive comments about how I never make anyone comfortable and that Ethan deserved to be happy. I told her firmly that this was my home and that guests, while welcome, do not override my comfort or consent. Ethan got defensive, saying I was being harsh and that I should let them live together temporarily to make things easier. I've tried compromising, offering suggestions like designated areas for Lena's belongings, agreeing on nights she could stay, and setting boundaries about shared spaces, but nothing seems to satisfy her. Every time I bring up limits, Ethan frames it as me being controlling and unsupportive of his relationship. I feel like my home is no longer mine, and I'm constantly walking on eggshells. Friends and some family members have weighed in. Some say I should just let her stay to support my brother's happiness, and that I'm being selfish by prioritizing my comfort. Others argue that I have every right to control my own living space, and that allowing Lena to move in permanently without my consent is unfair and unreasonable. To complicate things further, Ethan recently mentioned that if I continue to refuse, he and Lena might move out entirely and expect me to help cover moving costs. I told him that I cannot financially or emotionally support that decision, and that the boundaries I'm setting are non-negotiable. He accused me of being unsympathetic and damaging our relationship. I genuinely care about Ethan and want him to be happy, but I feel that letting Lena move in under the guise of temporary has turned my apartment into a situation I can't tolerate. I'm trying to protect my privacy and autonomy, but Ethan keeps framing it as me being unreasonable, inflexible, or even mean-spirited. Reddit: AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend move in with us, even though he insists it's just temporary, and she claims I'm being selfish and unwelcoming. AITA for refusing to let my partner's mother stay with us permanently after she moved in temporarily. I, 29F, have been dating my partner, Mark, 32M, for 4 years. We live together in a 3-bedroom apartment in the city. Our relationship has been great overall, but we have very clear boundaries regarding our home life and personal space. I work full-time as a software developer, and Mark runs his own small consulting business from home, so we both need quiet and routine to function. About a month ago, Mark's mother, Linda, 58F, called in a panic. She had just been evicted from her apartment because her landlord decided to sell the building, and she had no immediate alternative. She asked if she could stay with us for a couple of weeks while she figured something out. Mark called me that evening, asking if I was okay with it. I hesitated because I'm not close to Linda and we've never lived together before. However, Mark assured me she would only stay temporarily and would respect our house rules. I reluctantly agreed under those conditions. When Linda moved in, she was polite and unobtrusive for the first few days. She stayed in the guest bedroom and didn't interfere with our routines. But by the end of the first week, things started to change. She began leaving personal items all over the apartment, using our kitchen appliances for extended periods without asking, and assuming she could help herself to our groceries. I reminded her politely of our agreement and the rules I'd set, and she apologized, saying she just needed to feel a home. By the second week, it became clear that a couple of weeks wasn't going to happen. Linda started inviting friends over without consulting us, sometimes late at night, which disrupted our work and sleep schedules. She also began commenting on our parenting choices with unsolicited advice, criticizing me in particular for how I manage our household. Mark tried to mediate, but he often avoided addressing her behavior directly, and this left me feeling alone in enforcing boundaries. The real tipping point came when Linda started asking for financial help. She claimed she didn't have enough money to cover food or transportation while she looked for a new place. I told her we could contribute a limited amount, but she needed to actively find housing or income to support herself. She argued that we had plenty and that since we lived together, it was only fair that she be provided for indefinitely. I tried explaining the temporary nature of her stay, but she ignored this, claiming that Mark had promised she could stay as long as she needed. Tensions escalated further when Linda began subtly undermining me in front of Mark. She would make comments about how I didn't appreciate family or was being too controlling about our apartment rules. I tried to remain calm, but it was exhausting to constantly justify myself and enforce boundaries while dealing with passive-aggressive remarks. Mark eventually admitted that he was caught between his mother and me, and he didn't want to upset either of us. At one point, Linda invited her friend over for dinner without asking. They used our kitchen to cook a large meal and left it in a mess afterward. I confronted her, saying that I would not allow our home to be treated like a public space and that she needed to respect our shared areas. She became defensive, accusing me of being unwelcoming and ungrateful. Mark intervened, but instead of backing me up, he said we should try to make her feel comfortable, which only made me feel like my concerns were being dismissed. After 3 weeks, I realized that Linda had no intention of leaving anytime soon. I had tried multiple approaches, polite reminders, offers to help her find short-term housing, and setting clear expectations about chores and finances. None of these were taken seriously. Her presence was affecting my mental health, disrupting my work, and creating tension between Mark and me. I finally told Mark that if Linda didn't find another place within the next 2 weeks, I would have no choice but to ask her to leave. Mark was upset and accused me of being harsh, saying that I was choosing rules over family. Linda framed me as the villain, telling Mark that I didn't care about her situation and that I was trying to push her out. She began leaving notes around the apartment criticizing my behavior, and sometimes refused to speak to me directly while making passive-aggressive comments. I stayed firm, explaining that my concerns were about boundaries and maintaining a functional household, not personal animosity. Some of our friends and extended family have weighed in. A few say I should just let her stay since she is nowhere else, while others support me in setting boundaries and insisting that temporary means temporary. I feel like I've done everything reasonable. I agreed to a temporary stay, communicated expectations clearly, offered assistance for finding alternatives, and tried to be patient. But I also cannot compromise my mental health, work, or relationship with Mark indefinitely to accommodate someone who refuses to respect boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to let my partner's mother stay with us permanently after she moved in temporarily. AITA for refusing to pay my sister back for something she refuses to admit she borrowed. This all started about 6 months ago when my sister, Jess, came over to my apartment unexpectedly. We don't live in the same city, so visits are rare, but she claimed she was in town for a work trip and wanted to catch up. I was happy to see her, even though I had just moved into a new apartment and hadn't fully unpacked. She came in, gave me a hug, and immediately started looking around as if she was inspecting everything. I thought nothing of it at first. Jess has always been a little nosy. After we settled in, she mentioned that she was really stressed because her job was going through a huge downsizing and she was worried about finances. I felt bad for her, so I offered to let her borrow some cash if she needed it. She declined, but then, as we were drinking coffee, she asked if she could borrow my camera for her trip. I have a high-end DSLR that I don't use professionally, but it's very important to me, both sentimentally and practically. So, I hesitated. She insisted she would take good care of it and promised to return it immediately after her trip. I finally agreed because I didn't want to ruin her visit and I thought maybe it would be nice to help her. A week after she left, she returned the camera, but something fell off. It looked like it had been used a lot, and when I checked it, there were tiny scratches on the lens and the body. I was upset, but I didn't say anything yet because I wasn't sure if it had been like that before. I assumed maybe I was overreacting. 2 weeks later, I noticed that a small but very expensive lens cap that I always keep with the camera was missing. I asked Jess about it, and she denied ever having it. I told her it must have fallen out during her trip, but she insisted she never had it and wouldn't take responsibility. I didn't push too hard at the time because I wanted to avoid a confrontation, but the thought lingered. A month later, I needed the camera for a photography project. I grabbed it and realized a memory card that I always leave, and it was also gone. This time I was sure she had taken it because I never remove it. I asked her politely over text if she remembered taking it by mistake, but she responded angrily, saying she never touched it and that I was accusing her for no reason. I tried to be calm, explaining that I wasn't angry but wanted the card back. She refused and said she didn't have it. Things escalated when I found out from mutual friends that Jess had bragged about taking a really nice lens from someone else and using it on her trip. That lens sounded exactly like mine. I confronted her over text again, pointing out the timeline and asking if she really wanted to deny borrowing my lens. She got furious, accused me of being paranoid, and blocked me on social media. I was shocked because I've always had a good relationship with my sister, and I never thought she would lie to me over something like this. I reached out multiple times, trying to be calm and reasonable, but she refuses to talk. I even offered to let her pay me back for any damage or replacement cost if she had borrowed and damaged the camera and lens, but she refused. Now, here's where things get worse. Our parents got involved. When I told them what happened, they immediately took her side, saying I was overreacting and shouldn't make such a big deal over a camera. They claimed that family should forgive and forget, and that I was breaking the family apart by not letting it go. I tried to explain that it's not about the camera itself, but about trust, honesty, and the fact that she borrowed something without permission and damaged it, then denied it. My parents said I was being too rigid and that I should just let it slide. I decided to stop trying to engage with Jess or my parents about this. I also decided not to lend her anything in the future and not to attend her birthday party, which caused more drama. My friends think I'm being reasonable. They say she clearly took something and refuses to own up to it. But I feel guilty because my parents are hurt that I'm not forgiving my own sister. Meanwhile, Jess has posted pictures from her trip showing her using what looks exactly like my camera and lens, which she tagged on social media, making it clear she had them. I screenshot these for proof. I even offered to resolve this quietly by letting her pay for any damage or lost items, but she refuses. Some people online have suggested that maybe I should just let it go to preserve family relationships. But every time I think about it, I feel angry that someone I trusted would take something valuable and lie about it. I've been struggling with whether I'm the asshole for refusing to pay her back, for borrowing something she never actually borrowed officially, and for not letting this go for the sake of family peace. So, Reddit, AITA here. Character count, 6661. AITA for telling my sister that she can't bring her fiancé to my wedding after all the drama. So, here's the situation. I, 28F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 30M, for about a year. We've been together for 6 years in total. Planning the wedding has been stressful, but mostly smooth until recently. The issue centers around my sister, Lisa, 26F. Lisa has been dating her fiancé, Dave, 27M, for 3 years. Everything seemed fine until I found out that Dave has a long history of creating drama in social situations. I didn't know the extent of it until recently. I was discussing the guest list with my mom, and she casually mentioned that Dave was a handful at family events, but I brushed it off thinking she was exaggerating. However, over the last month, I've heard several stories from relatives about how Dave has caused problems at weddings and parties, including yelling at servers, arguing with other guests, and even having a physical altercation at one cousin's wedding last year. I didn't take it personally because it wasn't my wedding, but it made me start thinking about potential problems. I brought it up with my sister in what I thought was a casual, joking way. Dave could be a bit much sometimes. Are you sure he's ready for a wedding setting? She laughed nervously and assured me that he would behave. I wanted to trust her judgment, but I couldn't shake the feeling that having him there could really ruin the day if something happened. Fast forward a few weeks. We finalized the seating chart, invitations went out, and everything was progressing normally. Then I got a call from Dave. He was upset because he hadn't received his invitation yet. I explained that we had sent invitations to Lisa and her family, and that if she wanted him to come, he would get an invitation with them. Dave's tone immediately changed, and he started lecturing me about excluding him and how it was unfair to assume he would cause problems. I tried to remain calm and explain that we weren't excluding anyone intentionally, but it really wasn't about him personally. It was about the history of disruptive behavior and the potential for a scene on my wedding day. I talked to Mark about it, and he was on the fence. He didn't want to cause family drama, but he also agreed that the wedding should be about us having a safe and happy day, not worrying about potential chaos. So I made a tough decision and told Lisa that we had decided not to invite Dave to the wedding. I stressed that it wasn't personal against her or him, but purely about protecting the event from unnecessary drama. I offered to host a smaller get-together for them after the wedding so they could celebrate with us in a controlled setting, but I felt like I had to draw a line. That's when everything blew up. Lisa went ballistic. She accused me of being controlling, saying that I was treating her like a child and that I was ruining her happiness. She told me that if Dave couldn't come, she wasn't sure she even wanted to attend. My mom is trying to stay neutral, but keeps hinting that I should just let it go and invite him to keep the peace. Mark is upset because he doesn't want to fight with my sister, but he supports my reasoning. I've received texts from other relatives expressing concern that this could create a huge rift in the family. Some are saying I'm overreacting and that Dave probably wouldn't cause any trouble. Others are saying I'm right to protect my wedding day. I genuinely don't want to hurt my sister, but I also can't risk turning my wedding into a stressful and potentially dangerous situation. Lisa hasn't spoken to me directly since I told her, but she's been posting passive-aggressive things on social media and tagging mutual friends to vent about me. I feel guilty because I know this will affect family dynamics, but I also feel like I'm standing my ground for the right reasons. I have no idea if she will come at all now, and it's putting a lot of stress on me and Mark. So Reddit, AITA for telling my sister that her fiancé can't come to my wedding because of his past behavior and potential for causing drama. I feel like I'm trying to be fair, but the backlash from my sister and some family members is making me question if I handled it the right way. This story is about 6,400 characters, keeping in line with the style and length of popular Reddit AITA posts. If you want, I can also draft an even longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more subplots, like additional family opinions, conversations with mutual friends, and details about how the drama unfolded, to make it feel ultra-realistic. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me during a family argument. I, 31F, have a younger sister, Olivia, 28F, and we have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, we were close at times, but we often clashed over small things. Our parents tried to stay neutral, but there was always an unspoken expectation that I would look out for her because I'm the older sibling. A few months ago, Olivia got engaged to Daniel, 29M, and she immediately started planning an elaborate wedding. She has a high-paying job, but she's also notoriously extravagant and tends to prioritize appearances over practicality. Early in the planning process, Olivia casually mentioned that she expected me to contribute financially since I have a stable career and she wanted my support as her sister. I was taken aback, but I asked her for a breakdown of costs, thinking I could help in some reasonable way. The first major conflict happened at a family dinner 2 months ago. Olivia and I got into a disagreement over the guest list. She wanted to invite more people than our parents thought reasonable, including acquaintances I barely know. I suggested trimming the list to focus on close friends and family, but she interpreted my suggestion as me trying to control her wedding. She snapped at me in front of everyone, saying, "You think you're so perfect because you make money, but you clearly don't understand anything about celebration or family." The comment stung, and I tried to de-escalate, but she kept insulting me, saying I was selfish, judgmental, and always trying to ruin things for others. Despite the tension, I still considered contributing a modest amount to her wedding, thinking it could help mend things. I agreed to cover the cost of flowers for the ceremony, assuming it was a reasonable compromise. However, during a planning meeting last week, Olivia started berating me over small details like the type of flowers I picked, the color palette, and even the timing of when they would be delivered. She criticized my choices publicly, saying that I was incompetent and just trying to make it about me. I reached my limit when she demanded I pay for an additional $3,000 for catering upgrades and insisted I also handle the hotel booking for out-of-town guests. I told her I was not comfortable with that and that my contribution would stop at the flowers. She reacted extremely poorly, yelling that I was refusing to support my own sister and being petty when she had always supported me in the past. Our parents tried to mediate, but Olivia insisted that I was the problem and that if I couldn't financially back her wedding, I shouldn't be involved at all. Since then, Olivia has been passive-aggressive, sending me texts like, I guess some people just don't care about family and don't expect to be thanked for anything. She's also been telling other family members that I'm difficult and unsupportive, which has caused friction at family gatherings. I feel trapped because I want to maintain a relationship with her, but I also don't want to enable her behavior or reward the insults she directed at me. I've offered to help in non-financial ways, like assisting with wedding planning, addressing vendors, or even helping with DIY projects to save costs. She refuses all of it, saying, that's not real help. Real help is writing a check and making sure I get what I want. This makes me feel like my boundaries and contributions don't matter at all. Friends I've confided in are split. Some say I should just pay to avoid family drama, that it's what siblings do. Others think I'm justified in refusing because Olivia insulted me and is demanding unreasonable amounts of money. Even my partner, Mark, thinks I'm right to set boundaries, but he also warns that this could permanently damage my relationship with my sister if I don't find a way to address her anger constructively. The latest escalation happened yesterday. Olivia called me in tears, accusing me of destroying her wedding dreams and never supporting her, and said that I was selfish and cruel. I calmly explained that I am happy to help in ways that don't involve writing her a huge check, but she refused to listen, saying I was just making excuses to avoid responsibility. I feel caught between wanting to protect my finances and dignity and wanting to maintain some connection with my sister. I'm not trying to ruin her wedding, but I also can't ignore the insults and entitlement. I've tried to compromise multiple times, but each attempt is met with anger and humiliation. Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me repeatedly during planning and demanded unreasonable financial contributions, even though she claims I'm being selfish and unsupportive. AITA for refusing to let my roommate's brother move in permanently after he initially said it would be temporary. I, 28F, live with my roommate, Jenna, 27F, in a 3-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. We've lived together for about 3 years, and our arrangement has always been smooth. We split rent and utilities evenly, have clearly defined chores, and respect each other's space. I work as a software engineer from home, and Jenna works evenings as a bartender, so we have complementary schedules. About 6 weeks ago, Jenna's brother, Liam, 30M, contacted her. He had lost his apartment due to financial troubles and was apparently having difficulty finding a new place. He asked if he could stay with us for a couple of weeks until he got back on his feet. Jenna called me later that day to ask if I was okay with it. I hesitated because I value my personal space and was concerned about the dynamics, but Jenna assured me that Liam would follow our house rules and that it would only be temporary. I agreed, setting conditions. He would contribute to groceries, help with cleaning, respect quiet hours, and actively look for a new place. The first week was mostly fine. Liam stayed in the spare bedroom, kept to himself, and helped with small chores. But by the second week, he started leaving dirty dishes in the sink, using our kitchen for extended cooking without cleaning up, and assuming he could help himself to our groceries without asking. I reminded him of our rules politely, and he said he didn't think it was a big deal and that he was just trying to feel at home. By the third week, things escalated. Liam began inviting friends over without notice, sometimes bringing 4 or 5 people into our small apartment. They were loud late at night, left trash in the living room, and often parked in spaces we had to use for ourselves. Our neighbors started complaining about noise, and I had to deal with awkward confrontations on our balcony. I spoke to Jenna about setting firmer boundaries, and she agreed. She confronted Liam, but he argued that he didn't see why we were making a big deal and claimed that he needed stability while he figured things out. He also started expecting financial support, asking Jenna and me for money for groceries, transportation, and even small bills. I reminded him that part of our original agreement was that he would contribute if he could, and that temporary help didn't mean indefinite support. At this point, Liam's attitude became increasingly disrespectful. He began undermining me in subtle ways, like criticizing the way I cooked or cleaned, leaving passive-aggressive notes about how I overreacted, and implying that I was being unreasonable for expecting him to follow rules. He also started making casual remarks about how nice it would be if he just moved in permanently, framing it as if it was a logical progression rather than a request. I tried to compromise by helping him research temporary rentals, short-term sublets, and even offering to co-sign on an apartment if needed. He refused every option, claiming they were too complicated or too expensive, and insisting that staying with us was easier. Jenna began to get frustrated as well, because she felt caught between her brother and me. She told me she understood my concerns, but also felt guilty about asking him to leave. Things finally came to a head after 5 weeks. Liam brought a friend over who stayed overnight without asking, left a mess in the living room, and spilled a drink on the carpet. I lost my patience and told him he needed to find a new place within 2 weeks, and that staying longer was not an option. Liam accused me of being mean and selfish, claimed I was family unfriendly, and started passive-aggressively leaving personal items in shared areas to teach me a lesson. Jenna tried to mediate but often avoided confrontation, which only increased my stress. Since then, the atmosphere in our apartment has been tense. Liam mostly stays in his room, but the passive-aggressive comments, random messes, and sense of entitlement continue. I've had to work from cafes and libraries to avoid stress, and my productivity has suffered. Jenna is frustrated because she feels guilty about the situation and keeps trying to defend her brother, but I feel like I've been more than reasonable. I agreed to a temporary stay, clearly communicated rules, offered alternatives, and maintained patience for over a month. Friends and family have weighed in. Some say I should just let him stay to avoid hurting feelings, while others insist that I'm right to enforce boundaries and not allow indefinite freeloading. I feel like I've done everything possible to be fair without compromising my home, my work, or my mental health. So, AITA for refusing to let my roommate's brother move in permanently after he initially said it would be temporary. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.